Hello, and welcome back to the Super English Talks. I'm your host, Jara, and I'm so happy you are here with me today. Thank you for choosing this podcast as part of your daily English practice. Every time you listen, you're not just practicing English, you are also learning ideas that can help you in real life. Today we're beginning a brand new topic, and I believe it is something that connects to everyone, no matter your age, your job, or your life goals. The topic is breaking bad habits. Now, when I say bad habits, I don't only mean the big ones, like smoking or eating too much junk food. I also mean those small, sneaky habits that slowly take our time, energy, or attention. Maybe it's checking your phone too often, biting your nails, or watching just one more video when you really should be sleeping. These are the little habits that seem harmless, but often make us feel guilty or frustrated. In today's episode, we're going to look at the psychology of habits, how and why they form, some real-life stories, including my own, practical, step-by-step strategies that you can use to take control of your habits and build a better version of yourself. So, get comfortable. Maybe pour yourself a cup of coffee or tea, and let's dive in. When I first thought about this topic, a very clear memory came to mind. Let me share it with you. It was a Monday morning about 5 years ago. I was sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop in front of me. I had a big project due very soon. A deadline was coming fast. On the table beside me was a fresh pot of coffee. I had also written a very long to-do list, and I was feeling motivated. I told myself, okay, today I will work hard and get everything done. But what actually happened? Instead of opening the important document I needed to work on, my fingers did something completely different. Almost like they had a mind of their own, they opened a new browser tab. Before I even thought about it, I was scrolling through social media, looking at what my friends had done over the weekend. At first, I told myself, this is fine. I'll just take a quick 5-minute break. It will help me relax before I start working. But those 5 minutes became 10. 10 became 20. And soon, 45 minutes had disappeared, gone completely. When I finally looked at the time, I felt that familiar feeling of guilt. That little voice inside me whispered, "You've done it again. You wasted your time." I had fallen into the trap of procrastination. Now, let's pause for a moment. What does procrastination mean? Procrastination is when you delay or put off doing something that you really need to do, usually because it feels difficult or uncomfortable. Instead, you choose to do something easier, even though you know it's not the right choice. This is what happened to me. And the more I procrastinated, the worse it became. The more I scrolled, the less time I had for my project. And the less time I had, the more stressed I felt. And the more stressed I felt, the more I wanted to escape into social media. This is what we call a vicious cycle. A vicious cycle is when one bad thing leads to another, and the problem keeps getting worse and worse. Have you ever experienced something like that? Maybe you told yourself, I'll only watch one episode, and suddenly, 3 hours later, you're still watching. Or maybe you planned to go to bed early, but you stayed awake scrolling through your phone, and now you're tired the next day. These are moments when we act on autopilot. What does autopilot mean? It's when you do something automatically, without really thinking about it. For example, imagine you're driving to a place you know very well, like your office or a friend's house. Suddenly, you arrive, and you realize you don't remember much about the journey. You drove safely, but your brain was on autopilot. This is how many of our bad habits work. They become so automatic, so ingrained in our daily lives, that we don't even stop to think. They just happen again and again. And here's the first important lesson. Habits are not random. They are not just simple actions we do for no reason. Habits are powerful, automatic patterns that our brains create to save energy. The brain is amazing. It always looks for shortcuts. If your brain notices that a certain action leads to a reward, like a happy feeling, a burst of entertainment, or a sense of comfort, it tries to repeat that action. It builds a path almost like a mental highway, so the next time it's even easier to do. This process is called the habit loop, a concept explained by the author Charles Duhigg in his book about habits. The habit loop has three main parts. The cue, this is the trigger, the thing that starts the habit. The routine, this is the action, the habit itself. The reward, this is the benefit or pleasure your brain gets, which makes it want to repeat the action. Let's look at my social media procrastination as an example. The cue, sitting at my desk, feeling stressed about my project. The routine, opening a tab and scrolling through social media. The reward, feeling relaxed and entertained for a short time. The brain learns this loop, stress, scrolling, relief. And once the loop is created, it repeats again and again. So, if we want to change our bad habits, the first step is to understand the loop. We need to recognize what the cue is, what routine follows, and what reward we are getting. Once we understand this, we can begin to replace the bad routine with a better one, while still keeping the reward. And that, my friends, is where we'll continue in the next part of this series. Let's go a little deeper into the idea of the habit loop. Remember, the habit loop has three parts. The cue, the trigger, the thing that starts the habit. The routine, the action itself, what you actually do. The reward, the positive feeling or result that makes your brain want to repeat the action. Now, let's look at how this worked in my own life. For me, the cue was sitting down at my desk with my laptop and facing a difficult task. That moment, when I saw the big project waiting for me, was the signal to my brain. A cue can be many different things. It could be a certain time of day, a place, an emotion, or even the presence of another person. In my case, it was the stress of having to start hard work. After the cue came the routine. The routine is the behavior, the habit itself. In my example, the routine was opening a new browser tab and scrolling through social media without even thinking about it. This is the part we often notice and want to change. The nail biting, the phone checking, the late night snacking, the scrolling. But the most important part of the loop, the part that makes the habit stick, is the reward. So, what was my reward? It wasn't really the pictures or the updates I saw on social media. It was the feeling. Scrolling gave me a momentary escape from the stress of my project. It gave me a tiny burst of relief, a little shot of dopamine, that happy brain chemical. For just a few minutes, I felt lighter and distracted from the hard work. And my brain learned something very quickly. When you feel stressed about work, open social media. It will make you feel better, at least for a little while. That's how the loop was completed. Stress about work, scrolling, feeling of relief. And once my brain discovered this loop, it encouraged me to repeat it again and again. Now, let's make this interactive. For our first practice prompt today, I want you to play detective in your own life. You don't need a notebook. You can just think along with me. Step 1. Choose one small habit you have. It doesn't need to be a big one. Maybe you check your phone as soon as you wake up. Maybe you grab a sugary snack every afternoon. Maybe you bite your nails when you're nervous. Just pick one. Step 2. Identify the cue. Ask yourself, what starts this habit? If your habit is checking your phone, the cue might be the sound of your alarm clock. If it's nail biting, the cue might be a feeling of stress. If it's eating a snack in the afternoon, The cue might be feeling tired or bored at that time of day. Try to pinpoint the exact moment or emotion that triggers your habit. Step 3. Name the routine. This is usually the easy part. The routine is simply the habit itself. Scrolling, snacking, biting nails, smoking, or whatever you chose. Step 4. Discover the reward. This is the most important step and sometimes the hardest. Ask yourself, what do I actually get from this habit? It's not really about the action itself. It's about the feeling the action gives you. With the phone, the reward might be a small bit of excitement when you see new messages. With biting your nails, the reward might be temporary relief from stress. With a sugary snack, the reward might be comfort or a burst of energy. The reward is the engine that drives the whole loop. And here's a key truth. You cannot begin to change a habit until you understand the cue and the reward. If you skip this step, you'll always feel like you're fighting against yourself. Think of it like a car. You can't fix a car until you understand how the engine works, right? Habits are the same way. The habit loop is the engine. And here's another interesting fact. You can't really erase a habit. The loop doesn't just disappear. Instead, the most effective way to change a habit is to replace the routine while keeping the same cue and the same reward. We'll talk more about how to do that in the next session. For now, I want you to just practice awareness. Be aware of your habits. Be a conscious observer of your own actions. Don't judge yourself or beat yourself up. Just notice. Notice the cue, the routine, and the reward. This simple act of observation is powerful. When you move from being a victim of your habits to being a curious detective of your habits, you take back a little bit of control. It's like switching on a light in a dark room. You can't fix what you can't see. Let me share a quick story to illustrate this. A few years ago, I had a dear friend named Maria. Every morning, on her way to work, Maria walked past a small bakery. And every morning, the smell of fresh bread and sweet pastries filled the street. It was impossible to resist. What happened? That delicious smell became Maria's cue. The routine was buying a pastry. The reward was obvious, the pleasure of eating something warm and sweet, and also a moment of comfort before her busy day. Her specific habit was stopping at the bakery every morning and buying a big, sugary donut. She really loved the taste, and it gave her a little moment of comfort and pleasure right before starting her busy workday. The problem was, Maria was also trying very hard to eat healthier. That daily donut was not just a small treat, it was completely derailing her progress. She would enjoy it for about 5 minutes, but after that, the guilt would hit. She'd spend the rest of the day feeling bad about herself, thinking, why did I do that again? Let's break Maria's habit down using the habit loop. Cue. Walking past the bakery and smelling the fresh pastries. Routine. Stopping, buying, and eating the donut. Reward. The sweet taste and that short feeling of comfort and pleasure. Simple, right? But powerful. Maria wanted to stop. She tried to rely on something many of us also depend on, willpower. Have you heard that word before? Willpower is your ability to control yourself, the mental strength you use to resist something you want in the moment. For example, when you want to eat a piece of cake, but you tell yourself no, you're using willpower. The problem with willpower is that it works like a muscle. It gets tired. Every day, we make dozens of choices and decisions, both big and small. Each decision uses up a little bit of willpower. By the end of a long, stressful day, that muscle feels weak and exhausted. That's exactly what happened to Maria. Sometimes she could pass the bakery without stopping, especially when she felt motivated and strong. She might succeed for a day, maybe even 2. But by the third day, when she was tired or stressed, her willpower was gone. And the habit came back. This cycle repeated again and again. Maria would resist, then give in, then feel guilty. Each time she failed, she felt more frustrated. She even began to think of herself as a failure. But here's the truth. Maria wasn't a failure at all. She was just making a common mistake, trying to fight the habit while leaving the loop unchanged. Think about it. The cue was still there, walking past the bakery. The desire for the reward was still there, wanting comfort and pleasure. And the routine, buying the donut, was a strong, automatic pattern that had been reinforced many times. Trying to fight all of that with only willpower is like trying to stop a powerful river with your bare hands. The water will always push through. What you really need is a new channel, a new path for the water to flow. So what did Maria do? I helped her realize that she couldn't simply resist. Instead, she needed to substitute the routine. What does substitute mean? It means to use something different in place of the old thing. In this case, we kept the same cue and the same reward, but we changed the middle step, the routine. Here was the new plan. The cue is still the same, walking past the bakery in the morning. But instead of stopping at the bakery, Maria kept walking just 2 more blocks to a small, cozy coffee shop. At the coffee shop, she bought a hot latte and a small container of fresh fruit. This new routine was carefully designed to give her a similar reward. She still got to treat herself in the morning. She still felt comfort and pleasure. But now, the routine matched her long-term goal of eating healthier. She wasn't simply resisting the donut. She was rerouting her habit loop. Think of it like using a GPS. The destination, the reward, was still the same, comfort and pleasure. But instead of taking the old road, Maria found a new, healthier road that led her to the same place. That's the secret. You don't fight habits head-on. You reshape them. You keep the cue, you keep the reward, but you swap in a better routine in the middle. At first, the new plan wasn't easy for Maria. The first few days, when she walked past the bakery, she still felt that strong pull, the smell of the fresh pastries, the memory of her old routine. But this time, she had something powerful, a clear plan. She knew her new path, and she stuck to it. And here's what happened. With every successful day, the new routine began to feel easier. Slowly, it started to become more automatic. At the same time, the old routine, the donut habit, grew weaker and weaker. The bakery still smelled good, but the pull wasn't as strong. Maria had successfully replaced her old habit with a new one. And this is the secret to breaking bad habits. You don't simply try to stop a habit. You replace it. You intentionally design a better habit to take its place. This is why it's so important to have a clear plan. You can't just say, "I'm not going to scroll on my phone anymore." That's too vague. Instead, you need to say, "When I feel the urge to scroll on my phone, the cue, I will do this new action instead," the routine. The new routine doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs to give you a similar reward. For example, if you want engagement, you could read a few pages of a book. If you want connection, you could call or text a friend. If you want a short break, you could stand up and stretch for 2 minutes. The key is that the new routine should satisfy the same need, just in a healthier way. So, here's your practice prompt for today. Go back to the habit you identified in the last session. You've already thought about the cue and the reward. Now focus on the routine. Ask yourself, what is the action I want to change? What is one small new routine I could substitute instead? It doesn't have to be big or perfect. Even a very small change can create a new path. For example, If your habit is biting your nails routine and the cue is stress, what else could you do? You could squeeze a stress ball, drink a glass of water, or take 3 deep breaths. Each of those new actions gives you relief, just like biting your nails, but in a healthier way. Remember, you are not fighting a battle against yourself. You are building a new path for your brain to follow. Let me share one more personal story. For a long time, I struggled with a habit that I think many of you will recognize: constantly checking my email. Here's how my loop looked. The cue was usually boredom or a pause in my work. The routine was picking up my phone or opening a new tab on my computer to check my inbox. And at first, I thought the reward was productivity. I believed I was staying on top of things. But the truth was very different. Most of the time, checking my email didn't make me feel productive at all. Instead, I saw a long list of new tasks, and I ended up feeling even more overwhelmed and stressed. So, why did I keep doing it? This is where I had to be a detective again. I dug deeper and realized that the real reward wasn't productivity. It was something else. Every time I saw a new message in my inbox, I got a little spark of excitement. That tiny burst of pleasure is called instant gratification. Instant gratification is when you get something good right away, without waiting. In this case, when I saw a new email, my brain gave me a small shot of dopamine, the brain chemical that creates a quick feeling of pleasure. It was just enough to distract me from the boring or difficult work I was supposed to be doing. There was also another hidden reward, a feeling of importance. When I saw messages waiting for me, it made me feel like I mattered, like people needed me. And that combination, instant pleasure plus a sense of importance, was what kept the habit alive. Seeing a new message in my inbox gave me a special kind of feeling. It made me feel like I was needed, like I was an important part of the team, even if the emails were just spam or advertisements. That's when I realized something important. My habit wasn't really about being productive at all. It was about getting 2 things: a quick escape from boredom, a small boost to my ego, a reminder that I mattered. But here's the problem. While I was chasing this little burst of pleasure, I was actually hurting myself. I was wasting my time and energy. I was self-sabotaging my productivity. Self-sabotage means doing something that secretly works against your own success. It's when you block your own progress without even realizing it. And honestly, I was a professional at self-sabotage. The turning point came when I asked myself, what's the real reward I'm looking for? Once I understood that the true reward wasn't staying productive, but instead feeling excitement and importance, I knew I had to change my approach. Here's the key. I couldn't just substitute checking my email with something random, like scrolling on a different app. That wouldn't solve the problem, because it wouldn't meet my deeper need. I had to find a new routine that gave me a similar but better reward. So here's what I did. Whenever I felt the urge to check my email, the cue, I would open my to-do list instead. The new routine was not check for new messages. The new routine was find one small, simple task I could complete in 5 minutes. This could be something as easy as replying to an important email I had already read, organizing a folder on my computer, or crossing off a quick task from my list. And guess what? The new routine gave me a much better reward, a real feeling of accomplishment. Instead of chasing a fake sense of importance from seeing unread messages, I now had the solid satisfaction of completing something useful. It wasn't just a temporary distraction. It gave me genuine progress and a boost of confidence. This is the power of understanding the true reward. There's a big difference between 2 kinds of rewards. Extrinsic rewards, rewards that come from outside of you, like getting a like on social media, a compliment from someone else, or a paycheck for your work. Intrinsic rewards, rewards that come from inside of you, like the satisfaction of finishing a project, the pride of overcoming a challenge, or the joy of learning something new. My old habit, checking email, was built on an extrinsic reward, new messages. But that reward was weak and short-lived. My new habit was built on an intrinsic reward, the deep satisfaction of making real progress. And that was much stronger, much more fulfilling, and much more sustainable. So, let's practice. Here's today's prompt for you. Go back to the habit you've been focusing on throughout these sessions. You've already figured out the cue and the routine you want to replace. Now it's time to dig deeper into the reward. Ask yourself honestly, what is the real feeling I get from this habit? Don't stop at the first answer. Think carefully. If your habit is eating sugary snacks, is the reward really the taste? Or is it the comfort and the escape from stress? If your habit is procrastination, is the reward really relaxation? Or is it the short-term relief from the pressure of a deadline? Once you discover the true underlying feeling, you can start thinking about healthier, more sustainable ways to get the same reward. To make this idea clearer, let me tell you about another friend of mine.
His name is Tom.
Tom came to me with a very classic bad habit, eating junk food in the evenings. Here's what happened. After a long, stressful day at work, he would come home, sit down on the sofa to relax, and almost immediately feel a strong, automatic urge to go into the kitchen. Without even thinking, he'd grab a bag of chips or a box of cookies. And just like Maria at the bakery, Tom wasn't really chasing the chips or the cookies. He was chasing the reward, that feeling of comfort, that little burst of pleasure at the end of a hard day. The routine for Tom was completely automatic. Every night, as soon as he sat down on the sofa to relax, he would head to the kitchen, grab a snack, and eat it, almost without thinking. It wasn't a conscious choice. It was just what his brain had learned to do. The reward, of course, was that little burst of pleasure and comfort from the chips or cookies. But here's the problem. While Tom enjoyed it in the moment, the next morning he would wake up feeling bloated, sluggish, and disappointed in himself. The short-term reward came with a long-term cost. Tom tried to fight this routine with willpower. He told himself, "I will not get up. I will be strong. I won't go to the kitchen tonight." But the problem was bigger than his willpower. His pantry was full of chips, cookies, and soda. All of the tempting foods were just a few steps away. They were easy to see, easy to grab, and easy to eat. The friction, the difficulty of doing the bad habit was almost zero. That meant the bad habit was the path of least resistance. His brain didn't have to work hard to get the reward, so it kept repeating the pattern. This is a very important lesson. When we try to change a habit, most of us focus only on our internal motivation. We think, if I just try harder, I'll succeed. But the truth is, our environment is often a much stronger force than our motivation. Our brains are designed to conserve energy. They always want to take the easiest, simplest path to a reward. If something is easy to do, we will do it. If something is difficult to do, we will probably avoid it. So I told Tom, we're not going to rely on your willpower. We're going to change your environment. We made a plan together. The first step was to remove temptation. We got rid of all the junk food in his apartment, every single bag of chips, every cookie, every bottle of soda. This created what's called a commitment device. A commitment device is something that locks you into a better choice by making the bad choice much harder. Now, if Tom wanted chips, he couldn't just walk into the kitchen. He would have to put on his shoes, grab his keys, leave his apartment, drive all the way to the store, buy the chips, and then come back home. Suddenly, the friction was extremely high. The bad habit was no longer the easiest option. Then we worked on making the new routine easy. Tom still wanted to snack on something crunchy and savory. So instead of removing snacks completely, we gave him healthier options. We bought carrots and celery, cut them into sticks, and stored them in clear containers in the front of his fridge, right at eye level. That way, every time he opened the fridge, they were the first thing he saw. We also bought a big bag of unsalted nuts and placed them in a beautiful bowl right on his coffee table, exactly where he used to put the TV remote. Now, when he reached out absent-mindedly, his hand went straight to a bowl of nuts instead of a bag of chips. This was a proactive strategy. To be proactive means to take action to control a situation instead of just reacting to it. Instead of waiting for his cravings to attack and trying to fight them with willpower, we set up his environment so that the healthier choice was the easiest choice. The result? Tom didn't have to think so hard anymore. His environment was doing half the work for him. When he sat on the sofa and felt the cue to snack, his brain naturally followed the new routine. The cue was the same, sitting down to relax, but the environment now pushed him toward a different routine and a much healthier reward. This is the power of becoming the architect of your own environment. You are not a passive victim of the world around you. You have the power to shape it. You can design your surroundings so that they support the habits you want and block the habits you don't want. Think about the opposite situation. Imagine you want to build a new habit of practicing a musical instrument, but you keep your guitar locked away in a closet. What will happen? You probably won't play it. The friction is too high. Now, imagine leaving the guitar out in the middle of your living room. Every time you walk by, it's right there, inviting you to pick it up and strum for just a few minutes. By lowering the friction, you make the habit far more likely to happen. We can use this principle for every habit in our lives. So, let's turn this into a practice prompt for you today. Think about the habit you've been working on in these sessions. Ask yourself, what are the environmental cues that trigger your bad habit? If your habit is checking your phone constantly, is it because your phone is always sitting on the table right in front of you? If your habit is eating too much sugar, is it because there's a jar of candy sitting on your desk at work? Now here's the crucial step. How can you change your environment to make the bad habit harder and the good habit easier? Remember, willpower is weak, but environment is strong. If you design your environment wisely, you won't have to fight your habits. Your surroundings will gently guide you toward better choices every single day. Let's talk about another powerful strategy for building new habits. We've already learned how important it is to add friction to bad habits and remove friction from good habits. But sometimes, even when the environment is set up in the right way, we still struggle.
Why?
Because vague goals are too weak to guide our behavior. That's exactly what happened to my friend Liam. Liam had a wonderful goal. He wanted to start running in the mornings. His motivation was strong. He wanted to get healthier, to clear his mind before work, and to feel more energized throughout the day. Every night before going to bed, he would say to himself, "Tomorrow morning, I'll go for a run." It sounded good. It was full of hope. But every morning, when his alarm rang, reality hit him. He was tired. The bed was warm and comfortable, and his mind immediately started making excuses. "I'll do it tomorrow instead. I'm too tired today. It won't be a good run anyway." Within seconds, his motivation disappeared like a cloud blown away by the wind. He would hit the snooze button, roll over, and fall back asleep. This is what happens with vague goals. A vague goal is one that is not specific, not clear, and very easy to ignore. Phrases like, I want to be healthier, or I want to be more productive are vague. They don't give your brain a clear path to follow. They are more like wishes than actual plans. So, I helped Liam move from a vague goal to something much stronger, a clear implementation intention. An implementation intention is a simple, specific plan that links a cue to an action. It usually takes the form of an if-then statement. For example, if situation X happens, then I will do action Y. Think of it like giving your brain an instruction manual instead of just a suggestion. Instead of saying, I hope I'll run tomorrow, you're saying, when the alarm rings, here's exactly what I'll do. Together, we broke down Liam's goal into a very clear plan. Cue. If my alarm goes off at 6 a.m., routine, then I will immediately put on my running clothes that I laid out the night before. Notice something important. His new plan wasn't even, I will go for a run. That was too big and too vague. The plan was just put on my running clothes. That's it. By making the action small and clear, we removed the need for him to make a decision in the morning. He wasn't asking himself, should I go for a run? He was simply following a command. When the alarm goes off, put on the clothes. Once the clothes were on, the run naturally followed. But we didn't stop there. Life is unpredictable. Sometimes it rains. Sometimes you wake up feeling a little sick. Sometimes plans just don't work out. That's why we added something else to his strategy, a contingency plan. A contingency plan is a backup plan, a way to stay on track even when life gets in the way. It means thinking ahead about possible obstacles and deciding in advance how you will handle them. Here was Liam's backup plan. If it is raining when my alarm goes off, then I will do a 20-minute bodyweight workout in my living room instead. This meant that no matter what happened, he had no excuse. He wasn't just planning for success, he was also planning for failure. He was being strategic and anticipating problems before they happened. The effect of this simple strategy was incredible. The first few mornings were still a little challenging, but the clarity of his plan made all the difference. The if-then statement, if the alarm rings, then I put on my running clothes, was so much easier to follow than the vague hope of I'll try to run tomorrow. And because Liam had laid out his clothes the night before, the action was easy. He didn't have to search for his running shoes in the dark or think about what to wear. Everything was ready. The path was smooth. It wasn't a choice anymore. It wasn't a debate. It was a plan. And when he followed the plan, he found himself outside running almost on autopilot. This is the power of implementation intentions. They transform vague goals into specific instructions. They remove the burden of decision-making, which is often the hardest part. And when combined with a contingency plan, they make it much harder for excuses to stop you. So, here's today's practice prompt for you. Take the habit you've been working on during these sessions. Write it as an if-then statement. Link your cue directly to your new routine. Then add a contingency plan. Ask yourself, what will I do if things don't go as expected? This way, you're not just hoping for success. You're preparing for it. The hardest part of Liam's habit, making the decision to start, was already done. The simple act of putting on his running clothes was his first small victory. That tiny step led naturally to the bigger victory of going out for his run. He wasn't depending on motivation anymore. Motivation is unreliable, it comes and goes. Instead, he was depending on a solid plan. And that's the key for you too. So, let's take a moment right now to create a plan together. Think about the new healthy routine you want to build. What is one small action you want to substitute for your old habit? Once you have it in mind, turn it into an if-then statement. For example, maybe your old habit is scrolling on your phone every evening when you're bored. And maybe your new routine is to read a book. Then your plan could be, if I feel bored while sitting on the sofa in the evening, the cue, then I will pick up my book and read one chapter, the new routine. See how specific that is? It's no longer a vague hope. It's a clear instruction. But let's go one step further. Life doesn't always go the way we expect. Sometimes we're too tired or too stressed or too distracted. That's why we need a contingency plan, a backup plan for when things don't work out perfectly. So, in the same example, if you feel too tired to read, your contingency plan could be, if I feel too tired to read, then I will listen to an audiobook for 10 minutes instead. This way, you're still following through. You're not breaking the chain. You're making success almost impossible to avoid. Now, let me share a very personal story with you. This is something I struggled with myself. I love coffee. I love the smell, the taste, the feeling of holding a warm cup in my hands. But I know one thing. If I drink coffee after 2 p.m., my sleep suffers. I toss and turn at night, and the next day I feel tired and unfocused. So I set a goal, no more coffee in the afternoon. I created my if-then plan. If I feel a craving for coffee in the afternoon, the cue, then I will drink a cup of herbal tea instead, the new routine. And for 2 weeks, it worked beautifully. I was proud of myself. I was sleeping better. I felt more in control of my choices. It felt like a victory. But then came one Tuesday, a long, stressful, exhausting Tuesday. I had a big deadline, my energy was low, and my stress was high. And without even thinking, without even noticing, I stood up from my desk, walked into the kitchen, and made a huge, strong cup of coffee. I drank it, went back to work, and completely forgot about my plan. It wasn't until bedtime that night that I realized what I had done, and the guilt hit me. The next morning, when I woke up tired, the little voice in my head started speaking. You know that voice, the inner critic. It said things like, "See? You can't do it. You're not strong enough. You failed completely, so why even bother trying anymore?" This kind of thinking has a name. It's called all-or-nothing thinking. All-or-nothing thinking means you believe that if you're not perfect, then you're a complete failure. There's no room for mistakes, no space for learning. One small slip feels like total defeat. That's exactly how I felt in that moment. My brain told me that one cup of coffee had erased all the progress of the last 2 weeks. But then I stopped. I took a deep breath, and I reminded myself of something very important. That one cup of coffee did not erase 14 days of success. It was just a single event. A slip, not a failure. The only real failure would have been giving up completely. So instead of listening to the critic in my head, I chose a different response. Self-compassion. Self-compassion means treating yourself with kindness instead of judgment. It means talking to yourself the way you would talk to a close friend. If a friend made one mistake after 2 weeks of progress, would you tell them, "You're worthless, give up, you're a failure"? Of course not. You'd say, "It's okay. You slipped once, but look at all the progress you've made. Just keep going." That's exactly what I told myself. And the next day, I went right back to my plan. This is such an important lesson. A mistake is not the end. A slip does not mean you've failed. It means you're human. Every habit journey includes mistakes. What matters most is what you do after the mistake. Do you give up, or do you get back on track? So today's practice prompt for you is this. Think about your new habit and imagine the moment when you might slip. Imagine yourself making a mistake. Now practice responding with kindness. What words of self-compassion would you say to yourself? Because progress is not about being perfect. Progress is about continuing, even after you stumble. Self-compassion means being kind and understanding to yourself, especially when you make a mistake. It means talking to yourself gently instead of harshly. When I slipped and drank that afternoon coffee, I made a conscious choice not to get angry at myself. Instead, I spoke to myself the way I would speak to a close friend. I literally said out loud, "Okay, Jara, that happened. You were tired, you were stressed, and you fell back into an old pattern. That's okay. You're human. Now, what's the next right thing to do?" And that simple question, "What's the next right thing?" changed everything. The next right thing was not to give up, not to wait until next week, and not to punish myself. The next right thing was to get back on track immediately. There's a wonderful English idiom for this: to get back on the horse. It comes from horseback riding. Imagine someone falls off a horse. It's scary, it's painful, but the best advice is to climb right back on before fear takes over. In the same way with habits, the best thing you can do after slipping is to act quickly. So, I didn't wait until Monday. I didn't say, "I'll restart next month." I made the choice that very same day. I drank herbal tea in the afternoon instead of more coffee. By bedtime, the guilt I felt earlier had already faded away. And in its place, I felt proud. Not proud that I was perfect, but proud that I had handled a setback wisely. That day taught me something powerful. The faster you rebound, the stronger your habit becomes. So, here's today's important practice prompt. We have to plan not just for success, but also for failure. That may sound strange, but it actually makes failure less scary. I want you to think about your new routine and your plan. Now, ask yourself, what might cause you to slip up? What's a likely reason you might return to your old habit? For example, if your new habit is to avoid scrolling on your phone, a slip-up might happen after a stressful day at work. If your new habit is eating healthy, a slip-up might happen when you're at a party with lots of desserts. Now here's the key question. What is your rebound plan? Your rebound plan is the specific action you will take the very next day, or even the very next hour after you make a mistake. It doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be clear. For me, my rebound plan became, if I have an afternoon coffee, then the very next afternoon, I will stick to my tea plan. Having that plan ready made it so much easier to bounce back without drowning in guilt or shame. I'll give you another real example. A few years ago, my friend David had a great goal. He wanted to read more books. He loved the idea of reading. He even bought a brand new book every month. But the books just sat on his nightstand, collecting dust. He would see them, feel a little guilty, and then do nothing. The habit loop was broken. The cue was there, seeing the book. But there was no routine. He didn't open it. And because there was no routine, there was no reward. So his motivation faded away. The problem was that David had no accountability. Accountability is a wonderful word. It means being responsible for something and being willing to share your progress with someone else. Accountability doesn't mean someone is judging you. It doesn't mean pressure or punishment. Instead, it means having someone on your side, someone who cares enough to check in. So I told David, "You don't have to do this alone. I'll be your accountability partner." We made a simple plan. Every Monday, we would have a quick 5-minute phone call. The only purpose of the call was for him to tell me how much of the book he had read over the weekend. That's it. It wasn't about me scolding him. It wasn't about grades or punishment. It was simply about sharing progress. Sometimes he read a lot. Sometimes he read only a few pages. But every week, he knew I would be there to listen. And that changed everything. The moment David had to tell me, a real person, about his progress, the situation completely changed. Suddenly, he wasn't just chasing a private goal that only existed in his own head. He was now part of something bigger. He was part of a social contract. This is what psychologists sometimes call positive peer pressure. Normally, when we hear the words peer pressure, we think of something bad, friends pressuring us to do things we don't really want to do. But peer pressure can also work in the opposite direction. It can push us toward better choices. For David, the pressure wasn't coming from guilt inside his own mind anymore. The pressure came from something much more constructive, the simple desire not to disappoint a friend. He didn't want to get on our weekly call and say, "I'm sorry, I didn't read anything." At first, progress was slow. The first couple of weeks, he only read a few pages. But soon something interesting happened. Our weekly check-in calls turned into something more than a report. They became a conversation. David didn't just say, "I read 20 pages." He started telling me about the characters, the plot twists, the big ideas. I shared what I was reading too. Now his habit had a brand new, powerful reward, not just accomplishment, but connection. Reading was no longer a lonely task. It became a shared experience, something fun to talk about with a friend. That changed everything. The habit loop was now complete. Cue. Seeing the book on the nightstand. Routine. Reading a few pages. Reward. A sense of accomplishment plus an enjoyable conversation. Within a year, David went from reading a single book now and then to finishing one book every month. And here's the best part. He genuinely enjoyed it. He wasn't forcing himself anymore. The accountability system turned the habit into something that felt natural and fun. This principle can be applied to almost any habit you want to change. If you want to exercise, find a friend who will walk with you a few times a week. If you want to eat healthier, team up with someone else who's also trying and share recipes or meal photos. Even something as simple as telling one person about your goal can make a huge difference. When you speak your goal out loud, "I'm trying to do X," you make it more real. You make yourself more committed. You create a healthy kind of obligation, not an obligation to someone else, but an obligation to your own success. So, here's today's practice prompt. Think about the habit you've been working on. Now think of just one person in your life who could be your accountability partner. It doesn't have to be a group. You don't need 10 people cheering you on. Just one person is enough. Ask yourself, who could I check in with? What's one small way I could share my progress? It could be sending a nightly text. "I did it." It could be a short weekly call. The exact method doesn't matter. What matters is that you are no longer alone in your journey. I'll give you another example. My friend Emily had a goal to improve her English. She wanted to study for 15 minutes every single day. She had everything she needed, the books, the apps, the motivation. But after just a few days, her enthusiasm started to fade. The problem wasn't her intention. The problem was the reward. The true reward of studying a language, fluency, confidence, freedom, is far in the future. It can take months or years. That reward felt distant and vague. Her brain wasn't getting the instant gratification it craved. At first, the habit loop looked like this. Cue. Sitting at her desk after dinner. Routine. Studying English for 15 minutes. Reward. Almost nothing.
No immediate pleasure, no immediate payoff.
And because there was no immediate reward, the habit fell apart. She would skip one day, then 2, then 3, until she stopped completely. I told Emily something very important. Her problem wasn't a lack of discipline. Her problem was a lack of a clear, immediate reward. She was relying only on the intrinsic reward, the long-term joy of becoming fluent. That's wonderful, but it was too far away to keep her motivated day to day. At first, Emily's feeling of accomplishment from studying English for 15 minutes just wasn't strong enough. It was real, yes, but her brain needed something extra, a boost to make the habit feel satisfying right away. We realized she needed an extrinsic reward. This is a reward that comes from outside of yourself, something you experience immediately after doing a behavior. Extrinsic rewards are very powerful because they give your brain a quick hit of pleasure, which encourages it to repeat the behavior. In psychology, this is called positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement means adding something enjoyable or rewarding after a behavior so that the behavior is more likely to happen again. So, we made a new plan. Emily's plan became very simple. Cue: sit down at her desk after dinner. Routine: study English for 15 minutes. Reward: immediately watch one episode of her favorite TV show on Netflix. This small change was a game changer. The cue was the same as before, sitting at her desk. The routine was the same, studying for 15 minutes. But now, the reward was fun, immediate, and something she genuinely enjoyed. Instead of waiting months or years to feel the benefits of learning English, she had a small, satisfying reward right away. Suddenly, studying English wasn't a boring chore anymore. It became the gateway to something she loved doing. Her brain started learning a new connection. If I study English, I get to enjoy my favorite show. Over time, this connection became automatic. The habit felt easier and more natural. This is the power of celebrating small wins. A small win is a tiny success that you can achieve every day. Each small win builds momentum and makes you feel good about your progress. You don't have to wait until you become fluent in English or achieve a big goal to feel successful. You can feel successful every day by rewarding yourself in small ways. It could be as simple as taking 5 minutes to listen to your favorite song, enjoying a cup of tea, doing a short activity you enjoy, like a crossword puzzle. The key is that the reward should be immediate and pleasurable, so your brain begins to associate the new habit with a good feeling. The goal is to make the habit feel good, not just feel right or necessary. Let's look at another example. My friend Mark had been struggling with exercise for years. He wanted to be the kind of person who goes to the gym regularly. He would buy a new gym membership, go for a week or two, and then completely stop. Mark would say to me, "I just can't seem to make it stick." The problem wasn't that Mark lacked motivation. The problem was that he was focused on outcome-based habits. Outcome-based habits are habits we do to reach a specific result. For example, losing 10 kilograms, getting stronger, running a marathon. The problem with outcome-based habits is that results take time. If you don't see progress immediately, it's very easy to give up. Mark's goal was to get in shape, but his internal belief system, how he thought about himself, was still, "I'm not the type of person who exercises." His actions and his identity were not aligned. This mismatch made every gym session feel like a battle. Motivation alone wasn't enough because it's unreliable. On days when Mark was tired, stressed, or busy, he simply didn't have enough motivation to go. I told Mark that he needed to stop focusing on the outcome, the result he wanted, and start focusing on the type of person he wanted to become. Instead of saying, "I want to go to the gym," we shifted his thinking to, "I am a healthy person." This is the power of an identity-based habit. An identity-based habit is a habit you do because it matches the kind of person you believe you are. It's no longer just about achieving a goal or seeing a result. Instead, it's about becoming the type of person you want to be. For example, the goal is no longer to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is no longer to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. We started with very small steps. The first step was for Mark to begin telling himself, "I am a healthy person." He said it in the mirror every morning. He said it when walking to his car. He repeated it throughout the day. This small change in his internal dialogue, the way he talked to himself, started to change his self-perception, or the way he saw and thought about himself. With this new belief, his actions began to feel different. Going to the gym was no longer a question of, "Do I have to go?" Instead, he thought, "I am a healthy person and healthy people go to the gym." The action was no longer a chore. It became a natural part of who he was becoming. It was like a professional basketball player practicing basketball. A professional player doesn't force themselves to practice. They do it because that's who they are. It's part of their identity. Mark started to see every small action as a vote for his new identity. Choosing a healthy meal instead of fast food was a vote for being a healthy person. Walking instead of taking the bus was another vote. Every gym session was a massive vote for his identity. He realized that habits are not just about results. Habits are proof of who you are becoming. This is why this step is so important. Once a habit is tied to your identity, you don't have to think about it anymore. You don't need to rely on motivation. You simply do it because it feels right for the person you are becoming. This is how habits become permanent. They are no longer temporary changes for temporary results. They are permanent changes in who you are as a person. The goal is to become the type of person who is confident, a good language learner, healthy, or active. Once you see yourself this way, the habits that support this identity become much easier because they feel natural. For our final practice prompt, think about the habit you've been working on. You've already identified the habit loop: cue, routine, reward. Changed the routine. Created a plan with immediate rewards. Now, go one step deeper. Reframe your habit in terms of your identity. Ask yourself, what kind of person am I becoming by doing this habit? For example, if your new habit is studying English for 15 minutes a day, don't just say, "I am studying." Say, "I am becoming a fluent English speaker." If your new habit is going for a 10-minute walk, don't just say, "I am walking." Say, "I am becoming a more active and energetic person." The way you talk about yourself and your habits is incredibly powerful. Every time you perform your new habit, you are casting a vote for the person you want to be. Think back to where we started. At the beginning, we became detectives of our own lives. We observed our habits, understood the cues, routines, and rewards, and started to make conscious changes. Now, with identity-based habits, every action you take is no longer just a small task. It is a step toward becoming the person you truly want to be. We learned so much about habits and how to change them. First, we became detectives of our own lives. We learned to identify the habit loop, the cue, the routine, and the reward. The cue is what triggers the habit. The routine is the action we usually want to change. The reward is the real feeling our brain is seeking. We discovered that to change a habit, we don't try to stop it completely. Instead, we replace the routine in the middle. For example, my friend Maria replaced her morning donut habit with a healthier coffee and fruit routine. She kept the cue and the reward, but changed the middle part, the routine. We also learned that sometimes the reward we think we want isn't the real reward. For instance, I thought checking email made me productive, but the real reward was a momentary feeling of excitement. Once I understood the real reward, I could find a better routine that gave me the same satisfaction. Next, we saw that our environment is a powerful force. Good habits are easier when the environment supports them, and bad habits are harder when the environment creates friction. My friend Tom made junk food harder to reach and healthy snacks easy to grab. By changing his surroundings, he made it easy to do the right thing without relying on willpower. But good intentions alone are not enough. We learned the importance of a specific implementation intention, which is a simple if-then statement that tells your brain exactly what to do. For example, my friend Liam created a plan. If my alarm goes off at 6 a.m., then I will put on my running clothes. This removed the need to make a decision in the morning. We also learned that life is unpredictable and mistakes happen. Practicing self-compassion is crucial. One slip-up does not mean failure. I learned to treat myself like a friend and get back on the horse immediately after making a mistake, rather than waiting until next week. We saw that we don't have to do this alone. Accountability and support systems make habits stronger. My friend David improved his reading habit simply by checking in with me every week. Sharing your goals with another person creates a sense of responsibility and positive peer pressure. Another key lesson was the power of celebrating small wins and using positive reinforcement. My friend Emily made her English study habit stronger by rewarding herself with an episode of her favorite TV show after each 15-minute study session. Small, immediate rewards make new habits feel good and satisfying right away. Finally, we went to the deepest level, identity-based habits. The most powerful way to make habits last is to see yourself as the type of person you want to become. Instead of thinking, I want to exercise, say, I am a healthy person. Instead of saying, I am studying, say, I am becoming a fluent English speaker. Every action you take becomes a vote for the person you want to be, and over time, your habits align with your identity. Think about all of these strategies not as separate tools, but as parts of a complete system for change. Imagine your life as a garden. Your bad habits are weeds. Pulling weeds alone is not enough. They often grow back. Your good habits are flowers and vegetables. You need to plant them intentionally. The environment is the soil and sunlight. If it supports growth, your new habits will thrive. When you combine all these strategies, understanding the habit loop, changing routines, designing your environment, creating clear plans, practicing self-compassion, using support systems, celebrating small wins, and aligning habits with your identity, you create a life where good habits naturally grow and bad habits slowly disappear. This is not a quick fix. It is a complete system for lasting change, and it works for anyone who is willing to observe, plan, and take small, consistent steps every day. Think of your good habits like a garden. You have to water them consistently with rewards and positive reinforcement, and you have to protect them from pests, which is like having a support system and a plan for setbacks. All of these steps work together to create something beautiful and lasting. Your job now is not to remember every single detail we talked about. Instead, focus on the overall system. Changing habits is a journey of continuous improvement. It's not a race, and there's no finish line. There will never be a day when you are done. But now, with all the tools we've discussed, you have a solid framework for approaching any habit you want to change, both today and in the future. You are no longer at the mercy of your autopilot brain. You have become an intentional person, a conscious person who understands how to build a better life, one small step at a time. For today's final practice, take a moment to reflect. Close your eyes and think about all the progress you've made, not just in learning English, but also in understanding yourself. Think about the system of habits and routines you've been building. How does it feel? Now, pick one small thing you can do today to take care of your garden of good habits. It doesn't need to be big. Maybe it's just drinking a glass of water instead of a soda, or sending a quick message to thank a friend for their support. Whatever it is, do it with intention. Even though this episode is ending, your journey is just beginning. You have all the knowledge you need, and you've done the hard work of learning. Now it's time to live it and make it real. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Jara, and this has been the Super English Talks. Until next time, keep growing your garden of good habits one small step at a time.